George Bruno with the 21 Convention, the Patriarch edition. And we're talking to Socrates today. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back.
Yeah. Well, you just got off stage.
I did.
How'd it go?
It's one of those things I honestly don't know. I know the points I probably should have hit. I don't really have the memory of the whole thing. So it's kind of the question is, did I hit all my points? Did I not? And I already know right now there were two crucial points that I missed. And you're like, I don't think it matters.
I think you're the only one who knew that, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, if I get 70% of the content, it's going to be terribly desirable.
Yeah.
And so, terribly pleased. My concern is always providing appropriate level of value to the guys, provide content. You in many cases have, that 45 minutes or an hour, whatever that is, for the guys who are attending. In many cases, it's even less for that for people who have a 7-minute span on a video. So you don't know what or when people are going to tie in and what's going to resonate with people. So you want to kind of hit all that, and you want to have just an honest, good performance. And so that, and maybe I'm a little too critical, but I think it's valuable, and you're competing with yourself to provide and be better, and I think I can live with the results. Let's put it that way. I can live with the results.
What a great turn of events that we're having a conference about fatherhood. How do you feel about that change?
It's one that I've been slowly advocating for a very long time. That I haven't been direct saying I'm going to be a family guy. That was never my sense. I knew to sell people what they needed to get them where you really knew they should go. And part of that for me was literally the book. Was to get people involved in relationships and relationship structures. And my first talk was literally a contrarian guide to pickup culture in dealing with the values of relationships. So I started that 10 years ago. Its transition culminated into the book on the sexual marketplace. It's a personal guide and map, literally. And so I've done that, and I've always kind of alluded that, hey, there's more. There's this, even in the map, I talk about, becoming marriage potential and the human potential. And so you know that's where I'm guiding you, but I don't necessarily have to teacher. You feel kind of like Moses, at the time, because I was single. I had concerns, and that's kind of where it all emanated from. And I know to drive my people to Israel, to the promised land, or however you want to call that. And so, I'm doing that, but there was a very serious disconnect between my personal life and my fears and insecurities. And I was getting to the point where I was going to have to make a serious decision. Is that, look, am I really going to go my own way, or am I really going to kind of really sit down and take a very conscientious effort and look at my life structure, what I'm doing, the women I'm involved with, and where that's going to lead me, and particularly with my fears of today's sexual marketplace. Now, that was years back. Things have only gotten worse. So we're talking about being responsible parents and fathers in the age of Me Too. And that's dangerous. And I don't mean it fictitiously. We're at the point where there's only so many hateful terms and words people will have in our vocabulary that mean anything. Racist, misogynist, deplorable. You don't have much room more to go other than open and condone sanctioned violence. And that's where we're heading. And that bothers me a great deal.
How do we as fathers deal with that?
Honestly, I'm going to steal something from a mentor and friend of mine. And it's this notion of the Testito family structure. And a Testito is a Roman legion formation. It was a platoon-based or a company-based, very small unit. That commander or centurion had responsibility and control and could initiate decisions on his own accord, under commander's intent. So they can move forward, back, cover, defend, join with other units as they saw fit, which made the Legion vastly more flexible on a field than a structured organization that had to be told, you move now, do this, and it dissolved the lines of communication. It pushed it all down. So if you take that idea of a fortified defensive unit, where they were able to shield over each other, lift everything else, and form a turtle formation, essentially is what they were doing. If you take that concept into a family structure, protect your own first. Fortify yourself. We talk about guys with shields and swords and all that stuff. Fortify and prepare your children. Develop solid personalities, independent, functional, healthy personalities. Combine that with capabilities. This is straight from, I'm stealing this from Ken's talk yesterday. Ken Curry and Dr. Sean Smith, who they're saying this is what builds confidence. And that's our role, to develop confidence in children to have a personality, stable, strong, independent personalities and capabilities as adults. So if we do that individually, we structure ourselves, start within, know yourself, start from within, change the world from inside first, and then extend that outward. And the secondary one will be a relationship. Make sure your relationship is guarded and strong and secure and capable. And then families, and it grows and emanates from that. And so I literally was talking about, if you want civilization to be stable and survive, or civilization, you have to have a culture that endures. You have to be supported by a society, by families, by individuals who are all thriving. All this builds upon one from another, but it starts with the individual. And so that's why I always supported the 21 Convention, when I really started getting into it, because they were self-bootstrapping. There was young men self-fathering, self-improvement, whatever the issues were, or interests or range, and there's a broad range of subject matter. They were bootstrapping on their own, and they were starting from within, and it emanated outwards. You start seeing it in relationships. You start seeing it live by example. We can combat feminism all day long. Nature doesn't care. They want to see results, and it's a ruthless, result-oriented structure. And so the reality is, either you will survive and have children to the extent that your children have children, and that makes you Darwinian successful, or you won't. And we need to kind of focus on what's important. Battling feminism, it's a heinous idea, okay? And it's played out as measured. It's not working for women, it's not working for children, definitely not working for men.
Right.
And so I could fight that, or I could provide a better alternative. And ultimately, I think people want to thrive. I think people will chase and gravitate toward virtue. And if you provide a better alternative than a loud argument, or a vicious repertoire, or a YouTube post or a meme that says no matter how witty hypergamy doesn't care, or a tweet that says, hey, this is the gender war, all true. What change have you affected?
Right.
Have you led by example? And I think we're at the point where we need more than just manuals. I know how frustrating it is to get a piece of IKEA furniture and see the instruction manual. We need better than that.
Yeah.
We need people to show us, because that's how we learn. We're mammals. We learn by imprinting, to walk us through, to train, to lead by example, to know we're not alone, to have a culture upon which we can draw upon. But we need those examples. And ultimately, I think if you focus and work on your own, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
The world around you can be on fire. But if your world and your family is whole and complete and happy and content, you'll gravitate to others.
Is there a fatherhood GPS?
Interesting enough, I think not in a application like we would find on, there may be, but interesting. Ken Curry was talking about that it's already baked in. It's in our genetics, and that was part of my talk as well. Is genetically, it is already ingrained. All the, for example, hypergamy is a calling, okay, and our patriarchal response to this is a Tarzan call.
Yeah.
Okay, in response to it, it's saying I'm capable, I'm fit, I'm prepared to survive, I know how to sexualize, I can engage sexually appropriately. And if we don't think that's a problem, we know it is, because we know the number of school shootings associated with kids who are underfathered, who have poor sexual relationships with the other gender or preferred gender. That's an issue. And I also know I can provide, okay, and that's the patriarchal call and reply to hypergamy is meeting that. Now, interestingly enough, women have the same obligation. Okay, there's a hypogamistic call. How are they prepared to respond to it? And right now, feminism is failing, culture in whole, failing women grossly, providing them no solutions, no experience or capabilities that have been proven successful that men naturally respond to. Their obligation is to get men to willingly commit to them.
Yeah.
What a challenge.
Yeah.
How are women faring? And we know they're not, because we're okay as a society having a 50% failure rate,
right?
Divorce rate,
right?
And we're okay with women recycling and redoing all these things, and they're not looking for alternatives. As a matter of fact, they're glorifying the fact that they're feral,
right?
I've got I have some friends, coworkers that really sit down and will celebrate the fact that she doesn't know how to cook and doesn't like to clean. And you're like, man, you better be throwing down the sex because I don't know what else you bring to the table.
Right.
Great individual, like her, but
Right.
man, there is a you just as far as far as my interest, whatever it was, gone.
Yeah.
Glad you have the guy you do.
Yeah.
You're not the one for me.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of that. And so I think naturally there's an internal clock, our desire to get with another individual, to have a relationship, our inclination for sexual productivity is a built-in GPS, already kind of guiding us already in. I don't think we're aware of it. I don't think we're fine-tuned to it. I don't think we understand the ramifications that, hey, this is why sex is so damn good, because we want you to get sloppy with your semen to have children because nature doesn't care how it happens.
Right.
That, and by the way, is probably some of the most natural things to happen. That's kind of
Sure.
what, thriving sexual mammals, this is what they do. They frolic, they engage, and they engage in sexual activity.
It's not natural to not have children.
Correct. It's abnormal. And for a species to do it, it's self-extinguishing.
So how old is your child?
3 years.
She's 3. So it's interesting. When I talk to some people, and I'll ask them, do you have any children? And I have seen this response a lot more in the past 5 to 10 years. People saying, I'm not going to have children because I wouldn't want to bring a child into this world. And that is such a despair-filled statement. Mm-hmm. How would you speak to the person? And there's a lot of people who think that way. I wouldn't want to bring a child into this world the way the world is now. And Tanner said something, there's never an ideal time.
Correct, right.
There's never an ideal. How would you respond to that person who speaks like that?
To have the same feelings and sentiments myself previously, not that I sat there and said I'm not because of the nature of the world, but there is no doubt. I'm kept up at night at times thinking about the world my daughter's going into.
Yeah.
And so I can sit down and say I understand and empathize with that. What are you doing about it? Are you preparing for it? You don't have a choice. This is a world you have. Mm-hmm. It's not the situation you may want. I would have maybe wanted a different background or a different time or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. This is the time we have. We won the gift of creation. We came out of nothing, essentially to exist.
Yeah.
And we're going to begrudge the situation we're in.
Yeah.
Could be a hell of a lot worse.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be monstrously worse. And so I would put it in context. The other part is I think there's a degree of ass kicking that needs to take place.
Yeah.
And it's like, get over your fucking self. Really, get more capable. You have a special obligation. How do you then turn around and literally turn backwards and face the 3 billion years of evolution, the 150,000 years of human evolution, the 250,000 generations of people that came before to make you, and said, I can't do it. I'm out.
Tapping out of this.
I don't have the ability, and I'm too afraid, and that's enough. And the reality is, if you can't get over it, nature doesn't care.
You just said something. The first time I heard this, we have an obligation to the species.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. That's profound.
Yeah. And I put that in saying that we do. Now, if you have a medical issue, if you sit down and say, hey, I've come from a history of so much trauma, that there's probably a genetic issue, or if I have medical issues that I'm likely to pass off. It is going to sound incredibly heinous. Yes. Maybe you do have an obligation to remove yourself from the gene pool.
Yes.
Knowingly.
Yes.
But we're talking about extreme outliers. Mm-hmm. And because that's an outlier, I don't think it should be relevant to or germane to an overall general conversation dealing with the whole population group. Mm-hmm. But on the whole, I think we have an obligation to our historical past, to honor our ancestors, to say their efforts and sacrifices and the things they did mattered. Yeah. Part of my talk, I showcased Neanderthals. I actually went through the brain size development. And interestingly enough, most people don't know this, we actually have smaller cranial capacities than Neanderthals.
Interesting.
Yeah. And by the way, that was an evolutionary advantage, and I kind of walked through that. But we don't face their challenges. So there was a crossover period in which humans and Neanderthals coexisted. We developed and evolved independently, and then we immigrated into their lands and territories, which means we're an aggressor. And if you think we have racial issues now within our species, imagine what it is with the subspecies. I can guarantee you the hostilities and the insecurities and the fear would have been vastly increased. And it's, humans don't behave well to that. I can guarantee you there was highly amount of conflict. And this is an apex predator. We're looking at, and it hasn't been determined that we're better than they are. It was very much in question. And so the question is that they were able to manage not only day-to-day existence and survival, okay, and thrive. They did it in the face of direct opposition and competition. Okay, it wasn't just competing against other humans. We're competing against another subspecies for the same territory, same land, same natural resources to thrive. And by the way, hypergamy was there too. And it didn't care either.
It didn't care.
And they were successful. I gave a story about how I really relished and developed the skill of changing my daughter's diaper, and really sat down and said, hey, this is a way of me protecting my family, my daughter, and really throwing it in. I kind of go into length of all the preparation and planning and all the staging of it. They didn't have diapers. They didn't have all the things with, formula and everything else. And so life was vastly more difficult.
Yeah, sure.
And they managed.
Yeah.
I don't sit down and say I'm sure they thrived. But I think we have such allotment of joy and pleasure and entertainment that we've taken so much for granted that we don't look at the disadvantages others have had in comparison. And it's, for example, I could sit down and say I have a tough job and I can beat myself up over it. And it's true. There's some really undue pressures. But when I think of my grandfather and the things he sacrificed to provide for his family and did the things he did, I don't think personally, I know for a fact, I would have responded nearly as well or as graciously. And I use that as a point of strength. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. Understand it. Okay. Understand the issue at hand. Take it in stride. Deal with it. Is this something you're willing to deal with? Not deal with it at that level, but don't take it any further and sit down and have it override everything else. That woes me. I can't handle this, or the nature of the world, or rage against the universe. It's not only going to be ineffective, it's terribly rude. What do you tell the ghosts of your past?
Yeah. Did you see? There's a movie coming out called William. Did you happen to see that?
I haven't. There's so much. I'm so engaged in so many other things. I don't really see a whole lot of pop culture.
They found.
I'm going to have to look.
Apparently, they found a Neanderthal, the remains of a Neanderthal, and they somehow extracted sperm and egg and whatever. And these scientists helped give birth to a Neanderthal child.
Okay.
Who grows up, and his name is William. And the previews look like, like he can fight. He's different. He's got kind of like that brow, that kind of thing. And it looks really interesting because he grows up knowing that he's different than everyone else. And I want to see how Hollywood portrays the biology.
And it could be remarkable. So, for example, not only do we have smaller brains, but regions of our brain are vastly different. Like all the back end of our brain for eyesight, smell, all that's vastly reduced because you don't need those hunting and gathering skills associated. And I bring several examples in my talk that go well beyond that. But the other one is the massive development of our cerebral cortex, the rationalization, the fine motor skills, manipulation, the communication ability for allow us to engage in larger tribes and packs and organizations and communicate. Resolution skills. Essentially all relationship skills are reduce in tension, conflict, and violence. Okay, making sure that we are able to manage and maintain relationships, those sort of things, so that we can take our short-term interests in account with long-term interests. Neanderthals didn't have that capability, or nearly as much. If they got angry, they probably went apeshit, and were probably damn good at it. Okay, physically, they may have been a little bit slower from the standpoint that they weren't as nimble because of the size and everything else. That's kind of very much in question. It appears that we are a lot more nimble and faster, or reflex-wise, and there's some indication of that. But honest to God, if you've ever seen a gorilla charge something, I have no doubt a Neanderthal moved just as swiftly. And I would not want to be put in that path. And I put literally an image of a Neanderthal fossil and a human skull together, so you have a comparison. And you just look at the Neanderthal and go, Jesus, that's a brute. I mean,
Yeah.
like, if this was going to be a fight, you're going to lose. It's
Yeah.
like, it's like the scene in Aliens, man. It's like, game over, man. You know, and,
right.
and so you have that. I'd be really interested to see how they kind of navigate it. I do think we would be alarmed and startled by their humanity.
Yeah.
And I think I quickly talked about, we can be moved when we see a dog resting on the grave of an owner or staying next to it, and we see that, and we see kind of that reflect. We project our humanity and care and empathy. That the animal's displaying.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine that with a much more sentient being that we know that loved, cared, that had these things both in their art and adornment and how they took care of the dead in their graves. The lengths that they went to do these things. And so I think we would be really kind of startled seeing something that was so close to us, but honestly so different.
Yeah.
And if you sit down and say between us and chimpanzees, which is about 7 million years in evolutionary structure, we share up to 2% or 2% differential in DNA.
Okay.
And I can guarantee you that the Neanderthal is just right there. And so I would find that really fascinating. I would think that would be really interesting. And the way they kind of actually would get the sperm and eggs, you can actually get it through the chromosome. You only need one, you can manipulate it.
Yeah.
Which interesting enough, makes men completely irrelevant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not only can you be a chrome, but you don't even need to be present.
Wow.
You don't actually have to donate, actual nuclear material.
Wow. You have a book.
I do. I finally got the damn thing out. It was 3 years in the making, and I'm the worst author in the world. I've done very little promotion of it. It's out there, and I hope it helps the guys that have direct need. And essentially, it is very much literally a map to help people identify where they're in the sexual. Well, one, what drives the sexual marketplace? What creates it? And literally I create an X and Y axis, natural selection, and I define those qualities, and then also the cultural things that stand opposed to natural selection, and I define what those are. And so you can actually now quantifiably be able to identify where you're at, where you want to go on that, and that's totally your choice, and what would be the most direct path. And part of that is because it's a vector, I can tell you scale, magnitude, and because of the ranges, I can tell you, hey, the map is not flat and even. There's some challenges, and when to anticipate those challenges. And based on your specific broken down score, I can tell you where you're going to be most effective. So for example, it's far better to improve a negative than it is a strength. And I know that's not people's most normal element.
Right.
But to sit down and say, hey, I'm an 8 on this one particular factor, trying to push myself to a 9 or a 10 is going to involve so much work for very little benefit or noticeable benefit, as opposed to if I score a 2 over here and I vastly change that to a 4 or a 5, bring myself to normal, go from subpar to par. And I can guarantee you that will revolutionize your life, just doing that critical element and where to affect a change. Now, ultimately, the sexual marketplace is primarily a natural selection marketplace. It's visual attraction, connections, that's genetic. And they need to understand that and what and why. And I kind of go into hypergamy and hypogamy, which is a male's natural selection interest. But I take it also further. So the primary two audiences are people that are below the sex threshold, the people who are in the friend zone. And I let both groups know that if you're there for reason and cause. The second group are those below the relationship threshold, the people that just can't get relationships for reason, and they don't understand why. And so I talk to both those groups, trying to bring them to normal, or what in the dating environment. The third group is literally that average, because anything that's average is at risk. You've had to put a lot of commitment into it. You're going to get marginal results. They're not consistent results. And not only that, nobody's worth investing further in you because you're average and irreplaceable. You're just as good as the next average person. There's nothing worthy of remark. And so the issue there was, okay, it doesn't take a whole lot, but if you're there, now instead of pushing on one or the other, you have the ability to do both simultaneously to bring you to the human ideal, which is that diagonal. And we talk about that, and what does that involve, and ultimately, what does it mean to be the human potential? Really reaching out to a specific individual and being truly utterly replaceable. And a lot of that is no longer about your personal skill, but understanding your mission and an agenda. What are you mutually going for that makes you utterly perfect? And that doesn't mean without flaw. I mean, it's kind of like a martini. That the perfect martini isn't a flawless martini. It's just one without major flaw. And if you sit down and say, I'm able to develop myself to that capability, that I have a strong, independent personality, I'm capable, and I have no major flaws. How fucking remarkable is that? So I hope that helps people. And
Where can I get this?
Yeah, you can literally find it on Amazon. You just type in Socrates, the map. If you just type in Socrates, you're going to get all the but if you do the map, you'll get it. The other is if you actually want to go faster, I actually have a YouTube channel that I'm pushing out content that's following this. So you can actually see the material up close in hand. I'll probably cover the first part, just the friend zone going to average, and provide all that content for free.
Yeah.
And obviously the notion is, here's the general content, here's the owner's manual, and I'll probably end up having a video course along with that. That would be more specifics of, okay, what do I do? Okay, here's the manual. I'll give that to you free because I want that content out there. But specifically, what do I do to change or shape or formulate some of that? There'll be a separate coursework, and so we're working on that progression.
Excellent.
So yeah, if you want to leg up on it real quick, I'll be releasing content on YouTube under Manning Up Smart.
Manning Up Smart.
Manning Up Smart
is your YouTube channel.
Yeah, YouTube channel.
And then how can people find you if they want to know more?
Primarily, it's going to be there. I have a old blog that's kind of really defunct, where I start looking at relationship skills, and I kind of break it down from pre-relationship development, early relationship development, relationship skills, maintenance, management, by category. The problem is I haven't been writing on it for several years because I've been so involved with content with the 21 convention, because I'm the broader range. I was reaching and touching more people. I'm going to circle back to it. So you'll see that come back, but you can find that at manningupsmart.com, and that's a primary blog information. The information is probably still very germane. It's written, most of the articles are probably written 5 years ago, but they're essentially classics. Relationship skills really don't change a whole lot. The perspective may be just a touch. I would almost be afraid to kind of look at it, because you're looking at your 5-year-old self.
Right.
And it's much like architecture. When you build something, it lasts. It sits there. And sometimes when you go back at it, I probably could have worded that differently, or I've changed and I'm viewing it differently. So it'll be kind of interesting to see that. But you can definitely find a lot of content literally there. The other part, quite honestly, is some of the best material that you will get will be on 21 Studios and 21 Report.
Okay.
So
wonderful.
Yeah. And much thanks to you. I mean, you make this easy, bringing it out, and
So it's my pleasure to do so. Socrates, thank you.
Thank you.